everyone. Today I want to warn about a big mistake many are in danger of making in response to the warnings about Kathryn Krick. I also plan to answer some questions from my listeners, but I have so much ground to cover, I am planning to save that for another episode. So you may have noticed that Kathryn Krick is getting a lot of exposure, and rightly so. But because of her flamboyant style and her high-profile personality, many people are missing something much bigger. And as a result, they're in danger of making a critical mistake. So today I want to explain what that mistake is and why it matters. First, if you haven't heard of Kathryn Krick yet, she's the 35-year-old lead pastor of 5F Church in Los Angeles, California. And she has a large following beyond the church. You can see that her Instagram account shows that she has approaching 600,000 followers there. She's got a following on TikTok. And she reportedly went to LA to get into acting, but she switched pursuits, and now she calls herself an apostle. And like others who call themselves apostles, she claims to heal people's sicknesses, to cast out demons. And a lot of podcasts and Christian media and even secular media have recently reported on her and warned about her, especially after a video went viral from an event at a Barnes & Noble in Houston where she was signing copies of her new book. It's titled Ignite Revival. And many of her followers at that book signing started crying and convulsing and shaking and falling over. They were allegedly under the influence of the Holy Spirit. So because of these extreme reactions that her followers have to being in her presence and their devotion to her, many with platforms have been warning that she is like a cult leader with a cult-like following. A headline from the New York Post this week calls her church a terrifying new cult. Another example of cult-like devotion that people have been citing is a birthday celebration she had where her followers were laying her gifts at her feet and they were calling her mama. So people looking at this see this and they say, this isn't typical behavior for a religious leader's followers to essentially bow at their feet and shower them with gifts and refer to the leader as mama, like they're her children. I'm very glad people are being warned about her. Kathryn Krick is a dangerous spiritual leader, but my concern is that people will focus exclusively on her and miss that the same teachings are being promoted by many other so-called apostles in the New Apostolic Reformation, ones who are not as theatrical in their style and presentation. She is young, she's beautiful, and her acting experience seems to have paid off for her. Her critics have noted that when she's up on stage speaking, she looks and acts like a performer, so she naturally gets a lot of attention. That's understandable, but she's definitely not the only one promoting the teachings that she promotes. Many others promote the same core teachings in books, online and social media. There are pastors in every city, in every town, promoting the same exact teachings that she's promoting. Notably, they promote what is known as Fivefold Ministry. That's an unbiblical and dangerous doctrine that's central to the New Apostolic Reformation movement. Notice that's where the name of Kathryn Krick's church comes from. I told you earlier, her church is called 5F Church. 5 as in the numeral 5 and F as in the letter F. And that comes from the Fivefold Ministry doctrine, which she promotes. If you pick up a copy of her new book, Ignite Revival, she has an entire chapter devoted to this teaching. Chapter 2 is literally titled Restoration of the Fivefold Ministry. And in the New Apostolic Reformation, the idea that the fivefold ministry needs to be restored to the church, that's just standard in our teaching. According to that teaching, Christ gave the church 5 governing offices. These are 5 officers that are supposed to govern the church through each generation in church history. And those offices are apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. And according to NAR doctrine, churches have been missing the apostles and prophets. They've only had evangelists, pastors, and teachers, but they've been missing apostles and prophets. And so they haven't had the 2 critical offices that the church requires to be operating as it should with miraculous power, so believers can experience healing and deliverance. The apostles and prophets are the ones with the authority to bring supernatural power to the church, to enable all Christians to work miracles. So according to NAR leaders, the church has been out of divine order without apostles working together with prophets, because most churches today are governed by pastors or elders, but they're not governed by apostles and prophets. So in the Fivefold Ministry doctrine, you need all 5 offices for the church to be operating as Christ intended. And in support of teachings about apostles and prophets, in Kathryn Krick's book, in chapter 1, she appeals to Ephesians 4:11. That's no surprise. It's the standard passage that NAR leaders use. They take that verse and use it out of context to say that the church in each generation is supposed to have apostles and prophets alongside pastors, evangelists, and teachers. Now, that verse does say that Christ gave apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to the church, but it doesn't teach that those are offices, that they're ongoing offices that create hierarchical governing structure for the church through the generations. But NAR leaders have taken that verse out of context, and that's how they have twisted it and used it to say that it supports the idea of Fivefold Ministry, what they call Fivefold Ministry. So Kathryn Krick's promotion of the Fivefold Ministry doctrine shows the NAR influence on her. And you can also see the imprint of NAR on her in how her followers refer to her as Mama, like I mentioned earlier, when they gave her gifts. Calling her Mama is essentially code for calling her an apostle. It's recognizing her spiritual authority over them. We talk about this type of code language in our book, Counterfeit Kingdom. In NAR circles, leaders are routinely given elevated titles of authority. For example, Bill Johnson, the apostle of Bethel Church in Redding, California, is often referred to by his followers as Papa Bill. Cheon, the apostle at Harvest Rock in Pasadena, California, another well-known apostle in the NAR movement, he is often referred to by his followers as Papa Che. And then you have Cindy Jacobs, a prophet in the NAR movement, who has been referred to by her followers as Mama Cindy Jacobs. So prophets in NAR can also be referred to as Mama or Papa. All these NAR leaders claim special apostolic authority to heal people of sicknesses, to deliver them from demons, and to govern the church, just like Kathryn Krick claims. My husband attended Cheon's church many years ago. This is Cheon, the influential NAR apostle. I share in my co-author book, Counterfeit Kingdom, the story of how my husband decades ago was part of the New Apostolic Reformation movement and came out of it, and now he's a pastor and warns about the dangers of NAR. But when he was attending Cheon's church one time, he said that he heard Cheon from the pulpit, from the front of the room, share a story about a man who came to him and who referred to the story in Acts 4 about the early Christians who brought money and laid it at the apostles' feet, at Christ's apostles' feet. And then he gave some money to Cheon, saying, "You are my apostle." So the clear implication from Cheon, who was sharing the story later to his audience, was that they should do like this man did, and they should imitate the believers in the book of Acts who laid money at the apostles' feet. He was suggesting that he was that type of governing apostle, and it was appropriate for them to lay money at his feet. And that's essentially what people were doing with Kathryn Krick when they brought her gifts for her birthday and laid them at her feet. It was an acknowledgement of her apostolic status. Well, some leaders in NAR, like Cheon or Kathryn Krick, are more explicit about these teachings and practices. Others are much more subtle. Yet, they still teach Fivefold Ministry about apostles and prophets being essential and that other Christians must come under their authority so that they can learn to work miracles and they can experience healing and deliverance. In fact, I received a message from someone this week saying that they attended a church that would say it opposed Bethel's teachings and practices, and it would likely say it opposed Kathryn Krick, but the leader was still quietly viewed as an authoritative apostle. And the person that sent me this message said they realized that their pastor still promoted all the core NAR doctrines, even while presenting themselves as more balanced than, say, Bethel Church. That's what has me concerned. These NAR churches, these NAR leaders can arguably be more dangerous than Bethel Church and Kathryn Krick because they're more subtle. So people need to understand that Kathryn Krick's teachings and practices, though extreme, are standard in NAR. I really appreciate that Ellie Beth Stuckey pointed out in a recent podcast she did Kathryn Krick's connection with the larger NAR movement. People must be on guard against NAR teachings wherever they're found, even if the leaders aren't as sensational as Krick, and even if they aren't getting the critical attention that, say, Bethel Church and Bill Johnson have been receiving lately. So don't make the mistake of thinking it's only the Kathryn Kricks or the Bill Johnsons you have to watch out for. If you do that, you might think that you're not that much in danger because there is only one of her, or because there's only one Bethel Church. Because Kathryn Krick is so flashy and in your face, she's receiving a lot of attention right now. But NAR teachings are dangerous whether they're delivered by a dramatic, brash young woman or by a soft-spoken, seemingly humble older man. That's all I have for now. Stay discerning, and please share your questions with me in the comments. I'll plan to answer some of them in upcoming episodes. And don't forget, if you're interested in joining my book club, go check out my Substack community at Hold Fast with Holly Pivick. It's hollypivick.substack.com. It's not too late to sign up. We'd love to have you join us.